Are you concerned about your future? We invite you to consider Option Canada.
I'm a former Canadian immigration officer and a senior case analyst, and I've served the Canadian government for 16 years. I provide accurate assessment on every case, and I'll be happy to assist you in making Canada your home.
For the past 26 years, we have assisted professionals, business people, senior managers, and the self-employed worldwide to relocate to Canada. We can help you and loved ones back home live the Canadian dream.
Do it once, do it right.
I'm Aruna Papp. For the past 35 years, I've been working with families who are dealing with conflict. And over the years, I've seen that conflict within the family has remained similar, but also changed a little bit. And as service providers, counselors, therapists, we also have to learn about what's happening in the family and what do we need to do to help them become stronger. And with me is Anusha, who's also working with families. How long have you been working with families dealing with conflict?
So, Aruna, I work with families and children in making sure that they're doing well. We're addressing a lot of issues around family conflict. I've been working with them for the past 17 years. I work with Children's Aid Society. So primarily our role is to ensure that children are safe and the families are strong and then they're doing well.
I just mentioned that conflict within the family is changing from when I was a child, which was a million years ago, and then when you were younger, the conflict has changed. What does that look like today? Families who are younger, for example, who have teenage kids. What are some of the conflicts that they're facing, and what are some of the conflicts that parents who have younger children facing that you deal with in your work?
So many different type of conflicts. I would say for youth, let's look at that first. We're looking at a lot of parent-teen conflicts. That's been the tradition, so-called, you can say, in a parent-child relationship, in terms of how there's always going to be a difference of opinion. There's always going to be times where you're not going to see eye to eye. I think it's really hard for youth growing up today, in today's time, to adjust to what's out there in society, to accept a lot more that's coming their way that maybe you and I in our time didn't have to deal with. And the environment was different, the exposure was different. And I think parents struggle with trying to keep that balance of letting kids live their life independently, but also the worries are very different in the society we live in today.
The difference that we are talking about, you are almost 30 years, 40 years younger than I am. Yeah. Okay, so I grew up in a different time. I am the first generation Canadian South Asians. You're the second generation. Now we are dealing with third and the fourth generation, right? So what you and I talk about is going to be very different. And hopefully in every show we bring different opinions. And I am the parent who made a lot of mistakes when my children were young, and I couldn't understand because my parenting was done in India by my parents, who said, don't look at me, don't talk back at me, do as I say. But my children learned different, and they were taught in school and class, go home and ask your mom, ask your dad. And to me, those asking those questions were like they're challenging me. So as a second generation South Asian parent, how are you and your colleagues, your peers, responding to the children who are asking questions?
So children, I will always say, children or youth, even as adults, we're inquisitive. We're just, by nature, humans are curious, we're inquisitive, we want to know. We want to reason, we want to maybe battle and challenge some of what we're hearing out there. Children and youth have more of a tendency of doing so because they're constantly coming up with, there's new notions, there's new ideas, there's new ways of living, and information is at your fingertips. So now I don't even know if they're going so much back to their parents to ask. I think they're developing their own ideas, they're developing their own viewpoints of life and what's around them. So they're just having the information free flow. It's coming out from every which way. So maybe that's where some of the parents are finding challenges, is that there isn't that dialogue, there isn't that conversation. It's not go ask your mom. It's, they're making their own, kids are making their own decisions.
So if they're not asking their mom and dad about the questions that they have, Who are they asking?
I think they're getting the information from everywhere around them. They may be asking their friends, they may be asking some family members. Like, it depends on who they're comfortable with. But then comes the question of, are they asking the right people? And is the information that's being given to them the correct or appropriate, let's say, information, right? Which then causes that disconnect and that reason for, the fighting and battling and, butting heads together, so to speak. Now, when you look at younger children, you'd asked about what are those, those pressures like. That's also, I think, different in today's age. Raising children today is very different from what it looked like even 10, 15 years ago, right? So I think you're just more worried. As parents, you're always more alert, you're more aware, more vigilant, and sometimes this crosses the line and goes into, hypervigilance and just worrying too much about their environment. Are they okay? Are they doing well? Are they learning enough? Are they eating enough? And it just never ends, right? It's ongoing.
Younger parents,
Yeah.
parents who are your age now, what are the pressures that their children are facing? Because we hear a lot about mental health with younger children.
Yeah.
I had never thought of or heard about children who are 10, 11-year-old and they're
Right,
depressed,
yeah.
for example.
I know.
And that's
Unheard of.
very, very shocking.
Yeah.
And it's not out there, it's in the community.
Yeah.
And parents don't have a way of detecting
No.
how is that 10-year-old depressed? Why is she or he always crying and moody?
Yeah.
What do you think is happening with these children?
So in our work, Aruna, I've seen a lot of kids that and parents who are not able to understand this whole concept of children's mental health and what's affecting them. So we're looking at anything from anxiety children might experience to really a lot of fears that are coming out in forms of in different forms. It could be defiance. It could be, like I mentioned, just psychosomatic effects of children, at 8, 9, 10, having constant tummy aches. That's a very telltale sign. If there's no medical evidence or support, to speak about what's happening to them medically, they're anxious, they're worried, and parents are not understanding why. And there could be a wide variety of reasons, right? There could be reasons around what's happening in their home, the conflicts between their parents or their family. These could be children that are suffering from their own mental health issues around just coping, and maybe it's it's something that needs a little bit more attention in like psychologically.
Parents are so busy.
And parents are busy. There's no
They're
time.
very busy and they don't have the time to sit down and chat and
sit
say,
with them, yeah.
okay, if you have a stomach ache, where is it coming from? If a child doesn't want to go to school,
Yeah.
they used to love going to school, they don't want to go to school.
And that's the thing.
We don't have the time to sit down and ask and
Yeah.
investigate
Yeah.
what is happening. Those are some of the pressures.
Yeah.
But children also know that everybody's wearing this $100 shoe or designer clothes, and they know
Yeah.
that my mom and dad can't buy them
Can't afford it. Yeah.
and they can't afford them. So
Right.
that's the kind of pressure as well. But I have found that when talking to parents, they don't want to explain to their children why we can't afford it. What do you think about that? Do you think that parents should tell their children why we are not able to buy whatever it is the child is demanding?
I think that depends on the age of the child, the relationship you have, and I think it's always good, and I personally, a professional in the field, would always encourage that kind of healthy conversation with kids in an age-appropriate manner from when they're younger. So things like, for a 6-year-old is not going to understand, or even a 7-year-old, about why mom and dad can't buy me these shoes that my friends have, or this new video game, or whatever it may be. But looking at starting to introduce financing, looking at a little bit of budgeting, saving, why it's important to budget yourself for the month, and having those conversations with them. So hopefully the hope is as they grow, they get more of an understanding and awareness that, that old age saying money doesn't grow on trees, right? So where does it come from, and what's needed, and how much is enough, and also just to distinguish between need and desire. There's two different things, which is hard for anyone, right, at any age to understand.
And something like that also generates conflict between husband and wife, for example. The
Yeah.
wife might say, or husband might say, yes, we will buy you, offhandedly,
Yeah.
and not giving it a thought. And I always suggest to parents that, when there is a question that a child has asked, please sit down and discuss between the mom and dad.
Absolutely.
And say, what is the appropriate answer
Yeah.
that you can carry through.
Absolutely.
You know,
I
and
think-
if you're going to say no, the explanation should be same.
Yes.
If the mom says the same thing and dad says the same thing, so the child has a consistent answer
Yeah.
to their question,
Yeah.
and not otherwise they end up, you know, they're very clever little fellows. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
the bidding mom and dad.
They will pit them
they'll
against
pit
each
against
other.
each
So
other.
I like that point. I think that's so important, Aruna, because you have to be on the same page. Where you might have your different views, it's important to sit together and have that conversation as parents about what your rules, boundaries are. So you're not having yourself in a situation where the children are going to play one against the other or just get mixed messages. So when we speak about children having mental health or having anxiety, you know, a lot of it also comes from their home environment.
Yes.
If something isn't right and something isn't stable, parents are constantly against each other. Conflict will result in children feeling really worried and anxious and scared at any age. That's a given. So I think we have to do some work with families around just letting them know if you are having struggles, how can we help? And that's what we do in our work, right? What are some of your highlights? Like highlight some of their strengths. Look at what's working well with this family. And then of course you look at what's not and address those issues as necessary. But bringing those conversations out, having these conversations is really important for the
And, you know,
children.
these are some of the things that I had to learn because I was a
Yeah.
very young parent
Yeah.
and had no skills to parent my children. And when I was in counseling, learning how to be a parent, one of the things that the counselors told me was set a meeting date. So we would say Thursday night is our talking night.
Okay.
So if you have any questions, write them down or tell me and I'll write it down. And so first few months were very scary time for the children because oh my God, I'm going to get into trouble. But what happened is when we had the time to think as a parent,
Yeah.
have the questions ready. This is the question I was asked. What is a logical? So I'm not
Yeah.
emotional.
Exactly.
And answering
Yeah.
the question and saying money doesn't grow on trees. That's not a good answer.
No, no.
You know,
It's
that's what
impulsive, right?
It's an impulsive. The child has asked a question,
Yeah.
and that to me is trust building.
Absolutely. I like that point.
You know,
it is so
if
important.
the child cannot trust your answer as a
Yeah.
parent, then they don't know who else to ask, and then they will go outside the home.
Right.
And today they're only talking about their shoes or their clothes or toys.
Yeah.
There might be more important questions that they will
Exactly.
ask.
Yeah.
So when we're dealing with teenagers today,
Right.
I find that when they come to see counselors and myself or anybody else, it's too late.
Yes.
Because the parents, like myself, have not had those conversations
Yes.
when they were young.
Yeah.
The trust building time has been lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the trust is now been placed in others.
Others, yeah.
And the teenagers don't know how to talk to them, talk to their parents. And so I have so many people who will say, my daughter and I are best friends. Well, your daughter needs a mother.
Yeah.
She has lots
friends.
of friends.
Yeah.
But saying that you are her best friend is not a positive
Yeah,
thing
no.
because, you know, she needs to be able to go to a mom and say, this is what I'm worried about,
Right.
this is my question. And that trust has to be built rather early. You know, the challenges are as soon as the child is born.
And I think that's key. That is what research shows is from birth to 5 years is your highlight. That's the time that you're going to want to build your trust and do that work and build that relationship. So from a very young age and as they're growing in understanding, their mind and their development is growing with age, they know that, you know, no matter what, I've got mom and dad, right? I've got my parents and they're there, they're supportive. And not to say like they're going to agree with everything all the time, but like you mentioned, so they don't have to turn around and go somewhere else to find that trust and that acceptance. If you're getting it from home, you're gonna value it. You're gonna carry it with you, which is why it's important, as in our time, as tired as parents get, for them to find some of that time, especially as the kids are growing, to sit down and have those conversations and talk to them about how they're feeling. A very simple question that I don't know, it's something that would be helpful is, how was your day? Right? Asking your children that, or tell me something good about your day today, and then tell me something that wasn't so good. And then maybe that's a good conversation starter.
Absolutely.
But how to build on that.
You know, building that trust between parents and children takes time, time and diligent, and that's what I have learned from my experience, that it takes, and I didn't do that as well as I could have, I should have, right? But the other side of the coin is breaking that trust takes no time at all.
Absolutely, yeah.
One wrong answer, one smack in the wrong time, at the wrong place, and all of a sudden that fear sets in that this question or this parent is not safe and I can't. And sometimes we retaliate or we respond because we are tired, because we are preoccupied, and
natural,
we didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it's important to remember that building the trust will take our life.
Yes.
But breaking that trust can take an instant.
That's it. And children only know their parents from a very young age. They learn really quickly to depend on you, to rely on you for everything. And that's why those moments are pivotal. Like, it's important to know that you need to step back, as angry or frustrated as you may be, rather than act in a moment of anger. That can destroy a lot. It's very hard for children to build trust, but when they do, and their trust is broken or shattered, or they feel like they can't come to you anymore for any reason, that's where it spirals, and it can go really to bad
We often
places.
say to couples who are in conflict, don't go to sleep without saying sorry. But we don't say that to parents.
Right.
That when you were mean to your little child, go and say sorry before, you know, and if you say it as many times it needs to, the child starts to build that trust. And I think that, for me, has been the most important thing to understand over that lifetime of period, that the most important thing a person can do with their children is build that trust. And once that time is lost, then as a teenager, it's going to be really difficult to rebuild that.
It's ongoing work, and it's ongoing lessons that you're learning as a parent every day too, right? There is no great formula. There's no instant way of doing it. It has to come with time and different stages. And we always encourage parents to do that repair work, we call it, right? If you have done something that's wrong or not right, just like you would go to your equal or your colleague or partner and try and fix it and say you're sorry, acknowledge it. It's important to do that with kids, because what you're doing, Aruna, is you're sending them a good message that I'm human too. As a parent, I can make mistakes, but I'm going to own up to my mistakes and I'm going to try and fix it. So that's a really good message for kids to learn.
You know, I've heard so many people say, if you want a driver's license, you have to go learn how to drive and then get a license. If you get a license for this or that or work or whatever, nobody gives us a license to become parents. No. And even your 10 classes for parenting classes, it's not going to be the same, and you are going to make mistakes. But being aware that when I need help, when I'm not sure, asking somebody else who you look up to or who is a better role model. You know, my parents were not very good role models, so I didn't know how to bring up the children, and that's a great regret. So having people in the community to learn from and help you, and somebody you can trust and say, I don't know how to answer this question. I don't know how to build trust. What do you do? And no parent is perfect. We will make mistakes.
Absolutely.
But again, as we said, when we make mistakes, let's apologize and make things right. You know.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's a really good point. To reach out to supports, and for sure to know that you're not alone in this.
Until next time, good parenting, and I hope that we all recognize that we are human beings trying to do the best we can with our family, with our children, and we will make mistakes. But as human beings, it is also our responsibility to not just make mistakes, but also to fix them and ask for help when we need them. And you know, parents also need time out, which means dump the children on grandparents and go for a long walk. Take care of yourself. Until next time, this is Aruna Papp.